If you land one confirmed hit, I will publicly declare you the best civilian shooter at this event.
Feel the wind, back of your hand facing it.
Back of my hand.
That's it. Honest instrument.
Confirmed. Impact.
Whoa! Impact confirmed. Target down.
Range control. Standing by for 3.
She never competed on a world stage before, and when the final results came in, 52 nations had a new reason to be quiet. The Sonora Flats International Long Range Championship was not built for civilians. It was not built for women who drove 12 hours from the high desert in a truck with 200,000 miles on the odometer.
You serious? Look at that. She doesn't belong here.
It was not built for anyone wearing a sun-faded cowboy hat and dusty boots with red clay still pressed into the heels. But Lena Running Water did not care what it was built for. She walked through the registration hall at the outdoor complex just outside Tucson, Arizona, on a Wednesday morning in late October, and the room, full of decorated military shooters, NATO-affiliated competitors, and embassy-sponsored rifle teams from 49 countries, went quiet in the way rooms go quiet when something does not fit.
Did you say open?
Yes, the Open Military Division.
The registration table was staffed by a former Army colonel named Gerald Pickett, retired, who had run this event for 11 consecutive years without incident. He looked up at her, looked at the battered leather rifle case she set on the table, looked at the cowboy hat, and then back at his clipboard. "Civilian division?" he asked. "Open division," she said. He paused. The open division was where the militaries competed. Women had served in long-range shooting competitions at the international level since the early 2000s, when several NATO countries began formally integrating female marksmen into their competitive teams. By the time of this championship, roughly 14% of registered competitors in open division international rifle events were women. A number that had climbed steadily, but was still, by any honest measure, small.
Who is that?
I don't know, Voss.
I told him, wait.
What was rarer still was a civilian woman with no national team affiliation entering the open division at this level. That had happened exactly 3 times in 11 years of this event's history. None of those 3 had finished in the top 20. Pickett found her name on the list. He had not expected to find it. He found it anyway.
And the reason we saw. Is that a competitor?
Yeah.
Lane 27, he said, and stamped her badge. She picked up the case and walked toward the staging area. That was when Colonel Harlan Voss noticed her. Voss was Austrian, 43 years old, and had placed in the top 5 of this competition 4 times. He was not the best shooter in the world, he knew that. But he was among the best Europeans, and he had a way of carrying himself that made the gap between him and everyone else feel wider than it actually was. He was speaking to 2 members of his team when Lena passed, and he stopped mid-sentence to track her across the room. "Is that a competitor?" he asked, not quietly. One of his team members checked the registration board. "Open division, lane 27. Voss made a sound in his throat. Not a laugh, not quite a scoff. Somewhere between the two. And turned back to his conversation. Nobody said anything, but the exchange landed in the room like a stone in still water, and the ripples moved through every shooter who had heard it. Lena set her case on the staging bench at lane 27 and did not look back.
What is the range of this rifle?
She's built for precision at over 1,000 yards.
I haven't seen an AI unit integrated like this. It's truly impressive.
It's a prototype we're testing. Serious equipment, as you said.
The advanced processor connects to your ballistics data.
Integrated into the optic like that?
Impressive.
She already knew what that sound meant. She had been hearing variations of it since she was in her early 20s, learning to shoot on the high mesa above her grandmother's property in New Mexico. Every time she showed up somewhere she was not expected to be. It never slowed her down once. What nobody in that room knew yet was what was inside that case, and why the AI-assisted AXMC she was about to unpack had never been fired by anyone who handled it the way she did. "What is that?" said a voice to her left. The man asking was tall, South Korean military, a member of the Republic of Korea Army marksmanship team. He was not being rude. He was genuinely curious, leaning slightly to get a better look at the rifle she had just lifted from its foam cutout. "Accuracy International AXMC," she said. "338 Lapua, AI Integrated Ballistic System." He nodded slowly in the way people nod when they are recalibrating something they had assumed.
Hold left.
The AXMC was a precision rifle platform that had been adopted by several special operations forces around the world, chambered in multiple configurations. What made this particular generation of it unusual was the onboard AI ballistic processor. A compact unit mounted behind the scope, connected to micro sensors that fed real-time atmospheric data into a firing solution engine. Wind speed, air density, temperature gradient, Coriolis effect based on GPS latitude.
The stage record is 750 meters. No civilian has ever registered a hit at this distance.
All of it processed within 4 seconds of the shooter settling into position. Most competitors in this event relied on their own wind calls, their own calculations, their own experience.
If you land one confirmed hit, I will publicly declare you the best civilian shooter at this event.
I am offering you something you do not deserve, but I am gracious enough to offer it.
The technology was legal under competition rules. It had been approved 2 years earlier after a long committee review. But few civilian shooters had access to it, and fewer still knew how to integrate it with their own technique rather than substitute it for one. The point everyone missed, Lena had long since decided, was that the AI did not shoot the rifle. The AI gave you information. What you did with that information was still entirely up to you. She settled the rifle on the bench rest and began running through her pre-stage checks. Voss appeared behind her lane. He had brought a colleague with him, a Swiss competitor named Matthias, who ranked 3rd in Europe. They stood just far enough back to observe without technically interfering. "The system is impressive," Voss said. His English was precise, accented, deliberate. For someone who has never shot this stage before, it might even be helpful. She did not look up from the bolt. 3,600 meters, he continued. The record for this stage is 2 confirmed hits out of 3, set by a Norwegian ranger 2 years ago. No civilian has ever registered a single confirmed hit at this distance in open competition. She continued her check. "I'll make it simple," Voss said. "If you land 1 confirmed hit, I'll publicly declare you the best civilian shooter at this event. If you don't..." He spread his hands, a gesture that seemed to offer something magnanimous. "You simply confirm what the range card already says." She looked up at him then. Not angry, not flustered. Calm in the specific way that people who have survived real cold and real silence and real distance become calm. Not the absence of feeling, but the mastery of where feeling goes. "I'll take that bet," she said. Voss smiled. He had expected hesitation. The smile flickered when he got none. In the staging area, 11 other competitors had heard the exchange. 3 of them quietly took out their phones. They did not know what they were about to film, but something told them to be ready. The morning of the final stage arrived without ceremony. 6:45 in the morning, and the Sonora Flats were doing what open plains do in late October at altitude, breathing cold in the dark and warming fast as the sun climbed, which meant the thermal layers were shifting, which meant the air above the ground was not the same air at 1,000 meters elevation, which meant that anything a shooter calculated at 6:45 would need to be recalculated at 7:15. This was the cruelty of extreme long-range shooting on open terrain. The target did not move. Everything between you and the target moved constantly. The stage was set across a federally managed flat desert valley, the kind of landscape that makes distance feel abstract until you look through a scope and realize the target, a steel plate measuring roughly the size of a door, appears as a faint silver sliver, barely distinguishable from the rock face behind it. 3,600 meters is approximately 2¼ miles. A bullet traveling at that distance is in the air for more than 4 seconds.
Stand by. Engage. Next volley, synchronize.
In 4 seconds, the wind can shift. The temperature differential between muzzle and target can create a pressure corridor that deflects the round by several feet. The rotation of the Earth itself introduces a measurable lateral drift, the Coriolis effect, that at this distance could move the point of impact by more than 12 inches if not accounted for. There was no margin. There was no close enough. Lena went prone at 6:51 and did not move for 9 minutes. She was running a 300-word firing solution in her head before the AI unit even finished its calculation. Cross-referencing what the sensors said against what the wind felt like on the back of her left hand, which she had learned from her grandmother was the most honest instrument available to any shooter at distance. The machine tells you the number. Her grandmother had told her once, decades before the machine existed in this form. The land tells you if the number is true. She had grown up on land that demanded this literacy. Every mesa, every canyon, every shifting thermal above the high desert of the Navajo Nation had been part of her education long before she ever heard of a ballistic processor. Most of the competitors in this event had trained on controlled ranges, indoors or in climates where the variables were manageable. Voss had trained in the Austrian Alps, cold, precise, reliable winds. Excellent conditions for precision, not the same as standing on the edge of something vast and learning to read chaos. The AI unit chimed softly. It had completed its solution. The elevation adjustment was within 2 clicks of what she had already dialed. The windage was 3 clicks to the left of where she had already set it. She split the difference. She exhaled once, slow and complete, until there was nothing left in her lungs, until the space between heartbeats opened up wide enough to drive through. And then, in that silence between one beat and the next, she broke the trigger. The rifle fired. The round was in the air for 4.3 seconds. Nobody breathed. Then the steel plate, 2.25 miles away, rang like a bell across the open valley, and the sound came back 3 seconds later, low and clean and undeniable. Hit. She cycled the bolt, settled back in. The AI was already calculating round 2. Somewhere behind the firing line, someone said something in a language she didn't speak, and she didn't need to understand the words to know what they meant. The range officer confirmed the hit over the radio in a flat professional voice, the kind trained specifically not to betray reaction. He betrayed it anyway. There was a pause before he keyed the mic. Less than 2 seconds, but in a silent crowd of international military shooters, 2 seconds is an eternity. And when the words came, Lane 27, confirmed impact, round 1, the staging area did something unusual. It went completely still. Voss stood 12 feet behind the firing line with his arms folded. Matthias beside him leaned slightly forward, as if proximity to the spotting scope would change what had just been reported.
3 for 3.
It would not.
3 for 3, perfect.
Did she just?
11 years.
One of the South Korean team members started. Yeah, said the man next to him. She was already on round 2. The second shot came 70 seconds after the first. The wind had shifted. She had felt it, made the adjustment manually before the AI unit finished processing the new data and squeezed the trigger in the narrow window where the crosswind dropped below 3 miles per hour. Second confirmed impact. The third round she held for 2 full minutes. A thermal column was moving across the valley from the southeast, pushing warm air into the line between muzzle and target in an irregular pulse. Most shooters would have fired through it. She waited. The AI suggested a firing window. She disagreed with the AI by about 40 seconds. She was right. Third confirmed impact. 3 for 3 at 3,600 meters. No civilian had ever done it. No competitor at this event, military or otherwise, had ever scored a perfect 3 for 3 at this stage distance in 11 years of competition. The final standings were posted 40 minutes later. She placed first overall. Voss found her at the equipment table as she was breaking down the rifle. He stood there for a moment with his arms at his sides, which was the first time he had not been folded or gesturing since she had met him. "Where did you train?" he asked. "New Mexico," she said. "With which unit?" She fit the barrel into its foam slot and looked at him. "No unit. With my grandmother." He nodded slowly. He seemed to be running a calculation that was not coming out the way he had expected. "She was a good teacher," he said finally. "The best I ever had," Lena said. "She could call wind at 800 meters with a piece of ribbon tied to a stick. Said her father taught her, said his father taught him." She snapped the case latches closed. The land doesn't change that fast. Neither does what it teaches. Behind her, a young woman from the Japanese team, Barely out of her early 20s, she looked the youngest competitor on the roster, was standing with a notebook. She had been watching every stage. She had watched Lena all morning. "Can I ask you something?" the young woman said. "Ask," said Lena. "Did you trust the AI, or did you trust yourself?" Lena picked up the case and settled the cowboy hat back on her head. "Both," she said. "That's the part nobody tells you." She walked toward the parking area, past the scoreboard, past the cluster of officials still rereading the results as if a second look would produce a different number, past the flags of 52 nations hanging in the October wind. The scoreboard did not care who expected her to be there. It only cared what the steel plate said. And the steel plate had said yes, 3 times, at 2¼ miles. That was the only answer that mattered. If you've ever known someone who was underestimated and proved every single one of them wrong, drop their name in the comments. This one's for them. And if you want to see what happens when the next impossible shot meets the woman nobody saw coming, make sure that notification bell is on, because you do not want to miss what's next.